Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the program, so would you please take your seats? Thank you. If everybody would take their seats, we'd like to begin the second part of the program now. You'll miss my important introduction if you don't. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we are beginning our live stream of tonight's John F. Kennedy Centennial Profile and Courage Award ceremony. And I'm delighted to welcome our audience of online viewers. Now, there are many, many people who take credit for our decision to go online. One of the most important ideas came from the person who constantly gives us great ideas on how to use technology and other initiatives at the library. And that's this, my friend who claims to have a day job, but I doubt it, Ed Schlossberg, right there. And I thank Ed. And you'll be happy to know, Ed, that Mike Barnacle seconded the idea, so we thank him for that. We have so much to celebrate tonight, including President and Mrs. Kennedy's deep appreciation for the arts. Our next guest is a multiple Grammy Award winner whose songs are among the great pillars of American music. His music spans generations, and his songs have provided the soundtrack across decades of our lives, providing a source of warmth and wisdom and beauty in a changing world. James Taylor's music embodies the art of songwriting in its most personal and universal forms. In a career that spans almost half a century, he has sold over 100 million albums and has received countless honors, including the National Medal of the Arts and the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Barack Obama. And through it all, he has maintained a humility and humanity, offering a private concert for the victim families of Newtown, Connecticut, a memorial service for MIT officer Sean Collier, and an appearance at the One Fund benefit concert in Boston. And so James Taylor exemplifies not only President Kennedy's admiration for the arts, but also his belief in service and in our common humanity. Please join me in welcoming James Taylor, Kim Taylor, and Owen Young.
I hate to interrupt that. That was going really nicely. And may I say how great it is to be here tonight. Mr. Feinberg introduced my wife, Kim, and she will be out shortly in a second. Oh, take off my hat. She will be out shortly, but we're starting without her. This is Owen Young, ladies and gentlemen, from the Boston Symphony. Himself a pillar of that institution. And but may I say what a delight it is, and an honor, and frankly, a great relief to be in the presence of the Obamas again. It's in my mind, there's a connection between the administration and of JFK and that of Barack Obama, and I think it basically is that both of these great men summoned in us and brought out in the nation the very best of us, the very best of our spirit, of our generosity, of our courage, and of our progressive spirit. I'm honored to be here tonight. We're going to start with an old Scots tune that I learned in the mountains of North Carolina. The water is wide, and I can't cross over, and neither have I wings to fly. Build me a boat that can carry two, and both shall row, my love and I. There is a ship, and she sails the sea. She is loaded deep, as deep can be, but not so deep as this love I'm in. I know not how I sink or swim. Oh, love, it is handsome, and love is kind. The sweetest flower, when first it's new, but love grows old and it waxes cold till it fades away like summer dew. Build me a boat that can carry two. Yes, and both shall row, my love and and both shall row, my love and I. Now, a lullaby written for my nephew, who was named after me, and who was born while I was overseas in England. So I was when I came back, my brother Alex had a kid, which surprised us, and I mean, we were delighted, but also sort of equally appalled. We couldn't understand it, couldn't get our minds around it. But I called my brother to congratulate him and ask him exactly what he had in mind, and he told me that they were naming the little varmint after me, little baby James. So on the trip down to North Carolina, immediately after arriving back on these shores, I drove down to North Carolina to set eyes on the fella and wrote this tune on the way down. and he sleeps in the canyon, just waiting for summer, his pastures to change. Yes, and as the moon rises, he sits by his fire, just a thinking about women and glasses of beer, closing his eyes as the doggies retire. He sings out a song which is soft, but it's clear, just as if maybe someone could hear. He says goodnight, all your moonlight ladies. Rock-a-bye, my sweet baby Jane. Deep greens and blues for the colors I choose. Won't you let me go down in my dreams? Yes, and rock-a-bye, my sweet baby Jane. Now the 1st of December, it was covered with snow. Yes, and so was the turnpike from Stockbridge to Boston. The birches, they seemed dreamlike on account of that frosting. 10 miles behind me and 10,000 more to go. There's a song that they sing when they take to the highway. There's a song that they sing when they take to the sea. A song that they sing on their home in the sky. Maybe you can believe it, it might help you to sleep. Oh, and the singing seemed to work fine for me. So good night, all your moonlight ladies. Rock-a-bye, old sweet baby James. Deep greens and blues for the colors I choose. Won't you let me go down in my dreams? Oh, it's time to rock-a-bye, oh sweet baby James. Sweet baby James, he's a big old thing today. About to turn 50. Unbelievable. That's right. Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne plans they made put an end to you. I walked out this morning and I wrote down the song. I just can't remember who to send it to. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought were never end. I've seen lonely times and I could not find a friend. But I always thought I'd see you again. Don't you look down on me, Jesus. You gotta help me to make a stand. You just gotta see me through another day. My body's aching and my time is at hand. And I won't make it any other way. Oh, I have seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days and I thought they'd never end. I've seen lonely times and I could not find a friend. But I always thought I'd see you again. So I'm walking my mind to an easy time, my back turned towards the sun. Lord knows the cold wind blows, like to turn your head around. Yeah, there's hours of time on the telephone line, just talking about things to come. Sweet dreams and flying machines in pieces on the ground. Oh, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought I'd see you somehow one more time again, yeah. Thought I'd see you one more time again. There's just a few things that come in my way this time around. I thought I'd see you, thought I'd see you, fire and rain. Thought I'd see you just one more time, Suzanne. I'd like to introduce my wife, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kim Taylor, Caroline Kim Taylor. Just gonna play another sort of a lullaby. Don't mean to put you to sleep. That's why we insisted on going first. Oh, the sun is surely sinking down, but the moon is slowly rising. So this whole world must still be spinning around. Yes, and I still love you. So close your eyes. You can close your eyes. It's all right. I don't know no love songs, and I can't sing the blues anymore. Sure, but I can sing this song, and you can sing this song when I'm gone. stay as long as you like. Only close your eyes. You can close your eyes. It's all right. 'Cause I don't know no love songs, and I can't sing the blues anymore. But I can sing this song, and you can sing this song when I'm gone. Thank you very much. That was going to be it, but we got the news earlier about the French elections, which we're pretty excited about, and that Emmanuel Macron has won, evidently, évidemment, and so we're going to, in a sort of an attempt at celebration and to honor the connection between the French nation and ourselves, if I may presume, we're going to give a shot at the Marseillaise here. Félicitations. Thank you so much.
Never before has man had such capacity to control his own environment, to end thirst and hunger, to conquer poverty and disease, to banish illiteracy and massive human misery. We have the power to make this the best generation of mankind in the history of the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ambassador Caroline Kennedy, Honorary President of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Good evening. It's great to be back at the library. It's great to be back in Boston. And thank you all for taking such good care of this place while I was gone. I want to thank my family, especially Ed, for his devotion to this institution. His creative vision, his commitment to the history, and to our family legacy has made this library the jewel of the National Archives Presidential Library System. I want to thank Ken Feinberg for his amazing leadership and generosity. And I really, oh yeah, we should cheer for you. And I want to thank the foundation and library staffs for working to preserve the past and inspire future generations to public service in President Kennedy's name. Tonight, we're celebrating the timeless values that President Kennedy lived by and that have made America the indispensable nation: courage, patriotism, justice, innovation, service, and the commitment to building a more peaceful world. As his family, we're proud of what he stood for and its continuing power. Tonight, we're honored by the presence of so many public servants who live these values every day. This award celebrates the indispensable quality in public life that my father most admired: the courage to risk your career to do what's right. That may mean standing for the national interest when others are willing to trade it away for personal or local benefit. It may mean reaching out to work with others to benefit the common good when you could score points by criticizing them instead. Over the years, we've honored elected officials at all levels of government from both sides of the aisle. They have reaffirmed our faith in principled public service and set a standard by which future leaders can be measured. Our winners have shown us that we need to reward courage in our leaders and require it in ourselves. Today, when many doubt the integrity of our elected officials, this award is more important than ever. In addition to our honoree, there are two American heroes here tonight that I would like to salute. Vice President Joe Biden, a friend and colleague to my Uncle Teddy. A champion for justice, working families and women, an inspiration to all those suffering from loss. Thank you for visiting Japan and for telling the Japanese that I was responsible for your success. So they too should do everything I said. Secretary John Kerry, our planet has no greater advocate, our children no more farsighted warrior for peace and diplomacy. You have pursued the strategy of peace that President Kennedy laid out, and we are all safer, healthier, and more prosperous because of your indefatigable commitment and optimism. Thank you for trusting me enough to visit Japan only once when you had to check on Paris 38 times. This is a night to celebrate politics and family. As my father and uncles taught us, politics is a family endeavor. So I would like if we could offer a round of applause for First Lady Michelle Obama and for all the political spouses here tonight. Many of you here in this room cast your first vote for President Kennedy. You've told me how he changed your lives, and together you changed this country. Tonight, we present the Profile and Courage Award to President Obama, who had the same impact on another generation, inspiring us, our children and grandchildren, to change the world. On a personal note, I want to thank you for giving me the chance to serve. In Japan, I saw firsthand what American leadership means to the world. I saw the power of our commitment to a rules-based international order in lifting people out of poverty. I saw the hope and idealism of young people inspired by American innovation and possibility. Most profoundly, I saw the emotional outpouring after President Obama's visit to Hiroshima showed people and nations that they could overcome the wounds of the past to build a more peaceful world. As I stood in the Peace Park in front of its eternal flame, I couldn't help but think of my father's own work on the Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and how honored I was to know these two great men. People say it's hard to come home after being an ambassador. It's like moving back from college into your old room. I have changed, I've made new friends, I've grown up, but everyone treats me just the same. In my case, it means that I get to resume one of my most demanding responsibilities, which is introducing other members of my family. It used to be Teddy here at this dinner. Now it's someone who adored him and who I adore, someone who's pitched in to help me here and in Japan, the youngest but not the quietest member of the Profile and Courage Award Committee, Jack Schlossberg. Thank you.
Thank you, Mother, for that kind introduction. And once again, thank you for bringing me into this world. You're an amazing mother and friend and role model to me. I know everyone here is grateful to you for your service, for your example. Thank you all for being here tonight. This library is a very special place for me and my sisters in the same way that it is special for anyone who visits it. It allows us to have a relationship with the man that we never knew, but who holds such a special place in our hearts. We can come here to read, to hear his voice, read his words, look through his old notebooks and ties, and find strength and guidance and laughter from the spirit that lives on here. Courage was the quality that my grandfather most admired. As a young man, a soldier, and a president, he displayed it throughout his own life, and he celebrated other leaders who did the same. As we mark 100 years since President Kennedy was born, we celebrate his life and all that he achieved in it, and we remember that he himself represents what is possible in America and all the work left undone. Throughout his presidency, my grandfather made it clear that he alone could fix nothing, that he alone had no answers. He had the courage to plainly admit America's own shortcomings, to then lay out bold plans to address those problems, and to ask his fellow Americans for help in solving them. And in doing so, he inspired a generation to enter public service and to ask what they could do for their country. President Barack Obama inspired me in the same way. My life changed in 2008 because a young candidate was fired up and ready to go and said that, yes, we can. Without Barack Obama, I might still be sitting on my couch eating Doritos and watching sports. President Obama embodies the definition of courage offered by Ernest Hemingway and a favorite of President Kennedy's, grace under pressure. From his first days in office until his last, the president consistently put the national interest above his own political interest, while resisting the politics of cynicism in a system that all too often encourages it. He had the courage to pursue comprehensive health care reform as his first order of business, knowing the issue would cost him and the party politically. He continued the fight that was waged during the Kennedy administration, that my Uncle Teddy fought for 50 years in the Senate, and did what no president had been able to do in 70 years in passing the Affordable Care Act. We saw this week that it's a lot easier to criticize and dismantle. President Obama had the courage to govern responsibly. He had the courage to address the problem of climate change aggressively, fighting for responsible energy policies and challenging Congress to support the Clean Power Plan. And he brought the world together in Paris to finally put a limit on greenhouse gas emissions. Just as President Kennedy did with the space program, President Obama gave science and technology the highest national priority under his climate plan on the issue that will shape life on Earth for my generation and for generations to come. The president was bold and unafraid. He pursued nuclear disarmament throughout his presidency and had the courage to confront America's own history when visiting Hiroshima. And it was with courage that President Obama repeatedly called for sensible action on gun control, tragedy after tragedy. He showed me and my generation what is possible from our politics and gave us a new standard of political courage to guide us going forward. He connected us to one another with his hope and his determination. We all, especially young Americans, owe a great debt to this courageous president. We can live in the just, inclusive, compassionate, and strong nation that President Kennedy imagined and fought for if we choose the type of leadership that defined President Obama's last 8 years in office. That is our responsibility as citizens and is as important today as it ever has been. Tonight, the Kennedy Library and my family are proud to honor this courageous president. And now I would like to ask the President, Mrs. Obama, my parents and sisters to come on stage to present the 2017 Profile and Courage Award to Barack Obama. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, everybody have a seat. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Jack, for that really kind introduction. And I like the socks. I also want to thank you and Rose and Tatiana and your dad for sharing Caroline with us the past few years as America's ambassador to Japan. Caroline, you, true to form, did your country proud, and I'm sure your father and mom would have been proudest of all. I sure was proud, and I'm grateful for your friendship. I want to thank Ken Feinberg for his service as chairman of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation these past 12 years. He also rendered outstanding service to my administration when we were dealing with the BP oil spill. 9/11, he has rendered public service again and again and again. We're very grateful for him. It is wonderful. It is wonderful to see Senators Markey and Senator Warren, my dear friend and former Governor Deval Patrick and his lovely wife Diane, governors and members of Congress, Cardinal O'Malley, one of the finest Secretary of States ever to represent America around the world, John Kerry, and Teresa, and the best vice president this country's ever known, Mr. Joe Biden. I also want to thank Michelle Obama for, after the presidency, sticking with me. Because I think she felt an obligation to the country to stay on. But once her official duties were over, it wasn't clear. I love my wife. And I'm grateful for her. And I do believe that it was America's great good fortune to have her as First Lady. So I am humbled by this evening and to be honored by a family that has given this country so much. A family that's challenged us to ask what we can do for our country, to dream and say, why not? To seek a cause that endures and sail against the wind in its pursuit. That's what this family has done for America. And to all the members of the Kennedy family that are here tonight, thank you. I could not be more grateful to the Profile in Courage Award Committee for this honor. I'm also grateful that, unlike the Nobel Prize Committee, you waited until I was out of office. How fitting that we gather here this month, the 100th anniversary of President Kennedy's birth. I was born the year he took office, which makes me 55 years old. Had he lived to finish 2 terms, he would have been just 51. And he remarked on that possibility once, "It has been suggested," he said, "that whether I serve 1 or 2 terms in the presidency, I will find myself at the end of that period at what might be called the awkward age. Too old to begin a career and too young to write my memoirs." Now, I hadn't seen this quote when I wrote my first memoir at 33. I'm now in the middle of my second. Moreover, I expect to be busy, if not with a second career, then at least a second act. But it is true that I'm at the age, at that turn in the road, where one looks back as well as forward, to remember where one has been, so it's better to chart where one is going. And one thing I'm certain is that I was lucky to be born into that new frontier, a new world, and a new generation of Americans. My life, in many ways, would not have been possible without the vision that John F. Kennedy etched into the character and hearts of America. For those of us of a certain age, the Kennedys symbolized a set of values and attitudes about civic life that made it such an attractive calling. The idea that politics, in fact, could be a noble and worthwhile pursuit. The notion that our problems, while significant, are never insurmountable. The belief that America's promise might embrace those who had once been locked out or left behind, and that opportunity and dignity would no longer be restricted to the few, but extended to the many. The responsibility that each of us have to play a part in our nation's destiny. And by virtue of being Americans, play a part in the destiny of the world. I can say truthfully that the example of Jack and Bobby Kennedy helped guide me into politics, and that the guidance of Teddy Kennedy made me a better public servant once I arrived in Washington. I have to imagine it would give them great pride to see a new generation of Kennedys like Joe carving their own proud paths in public service. For whatever reasons I received this award, for whatever the scale of the challenges that we overcame and the scope of progress we made over my presidency, it is worth pointing out that in many ways the times that President Kennedy confronted were far more perilous than the ones that we confront today. He entered the Oval Office at just 43, only a few years after Khrushchev had threatened to bury America. Wars raged around the world. Large swaths of the country knew poverty far deeper and more widespread than we see today. A young preacher's cause was just gaining traction across a land segregated not only by custom, but by law. And yet, in that volatile tinderbox of a time, President Kennedy led with a steady hand, diffusing the most perilous moment of the Cold War without firing a single shot, enforcing the rights of young black men and women to study at the university of their choice, unleashing a corps of young volunteers as ambassadors for peace in distant corners of the globe, setting America's sights on the moon precisely because it was hard, unwilling to consider the possibility that we might not win the space race, because he had an unwavering faith in the character of the people that he led. Resilient, optimistic, innovative, and courageous. It's worth remembering this, the times in which President Kennedy led us. Because for many Americans, I know that this feels like an uncertain and even perilous time. The forces of globalization and technology have upended many of our established assumptions about the economy. They've provided great opportunity, but also great inequality and uncertainty for far too many. Our politics remains filled with division and discord, and everywhere we see the risk of falling into the refuge of tribe and clan and anger at those who don't look like us or have the same surnames or pray the way we do. And at such moments, courage is necessary. At such moments, we need courage to stand up to hate, not just in others, but in ourselves. At such moments, we need the courage to stand up to dogma, not just in others, but in ourselves. At such moments, we need courage to believe that together we can tackle big challenges like inequality and climate change. At such moments, it's necessary for us to show courage in challenging the status quo and in fighting the good fight, but also show the courage to listen to one another and seek common ground and embrace principled compromise. Courage, President Kennedy knew, requires something more than just the absence of fear. Any fool can be fearless. Courage, true courage, derives from that sense of who we are. What are our best selves? What are our most important commitments? And to believe that we can dig deep and do hard things for the enduring benefit of others. And that's why JFK's first inaugural still rings true. That's why Bobby's campaign still means so much. That's why Teddy's cause endures, and we still love him so much. Because of the tragedies that befell each of them, sometimes we forget how fundamentally the story they told us about ourselves changed the trajectory of America. And that's often where courage begins, with the story we tell ourselves about who we are and what's important, and about our own capacity to make a difference. We live in a time of great cynicism about our institutions. That's one of the few things that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. It's a cynicism that's most corrosive when it comes to our system of self-government, that clouds our history of jagged, sometimes tentative, but ultimately forward progress that impedes our children's ability to see, in the noisy and often too trivial pursuits of politics, the possibility of our democracy doing big things. Of course, disdain for elected officials is not new, as many of you in the room can tell others. 60 years ago, President Kennedy quoted a columnist in Profiles in Courage who'd written, "People don't give a damn what the average senator or congressman says. The reason they don't care is that they know what you hear in Congress is 99% tripe, ignorance, and demagoguery, and not to be relied upon." Which is perhaps a little harsh. 99% seems high. 85. But President Kennedy also wrote that the complication of public business and the competition for the public's attention have obscured innumerable acts of political courage, large and small, performed almost daily. Innumerable acts of political courage, large and small, performed almost daily. And that is true. I have seen it. I've witnessed it. I've been thinking on this notion of political courage this weekend, in particular about some of the men and women who were elected to Congress the same year I was elected to the White House. Many of them were new to Washington. Their entire careers ahead of them. And in that very first term, they had to take tough vote after tough vote because we were in crisis. They took votes to save the financial system and the economy even when it was highly unpopular. They took votes to save the auto industry when even in Michigan people didn't want to see bailouts. They took votes to crack down on abuses on Wall Street despite pressure from lobbyists and sometimes their donors. And they found themselves in the midst of a great debate. A debate that had been going on for decades. A debate that the Kennedy family had participated in and helped lead. A debate about whether a nation as wealthy as the United States of America would finally make health care not a privilege but a right for all Americans. And there was a reason why health care reform had not been accomplished before. It was hard. It involved a sixth of the economy and all manner of stakeholders and interests. It was easily subject to misinformation and fear-mongering. And so by the time the vote came up to pass the Affordable Care Act, these freshman congressmen and women knew that they had to make a choice, that they had a chance to insure millions and prevent untold worry and suffering and bankruptcy and even death, but that this same vote would likely cost them their new seats, perhaps end their political careers. And these men and women did the right thing. They did the hard thing. Theirs was a profile in courage. Because of that vote, 20 million people got health insurance who didn't have it before. And most of them did lose their seats. But they were true to what President Kennedy defined in his book as a congressional profile in courage: the desire to maintain a reputation for integrity that is stronger than a desire to maintain office. The desire to maintain a reputation for integrity that is stronger than a desire to maintain office. A conscience, personal standard of ethics, integrity, morality that is stronger than the pressures of public disapproval or party disapproval. A faith that the right course would ultimately be vindicated. A faith that overcame fear of public reprisal. It was a personal sacrifice. But I know, because I've spoken to many of them, that they thought and still think it was worth it. As everyone here now knows, this great debate is not settled, but continues. And it is my fervent hope, and the hope of millions, that regardless of party, such courage is still possible. That today's members of Congress, regardless of party, are willing to look at the facts and speak the truth, even when it contradicts party positions. I hope that current members of Congress recall that it actually doesn't take a lot of courage to aid those who are already powerful, already comfortable, already influential. But it does require some courage to champion the vulnerable and the sick and the infirm, those who often have no access to the corridors of power. I hope they understand that courage means not simply doing what is politically expedient, but doing what they believe deep in their hearts is right. And this kind of courage is required from all of us. Those of us who consider ourselves progressives, those of us who are Democrats, we've got some soul searching to do to see what kind of courage we show. We have our own dogmas. Those of us not in elected office have to show some courage. You know, we're prone to bestow the mantle of courage too easily on the prominent and the powerful, and then too eager to wrap ourselves in cynicism when they let us down because they weren't perfect. We lose sight sometimes of our own obligations, each of ours, all the quiet acts of courage that unfold around us every single day. Ordinary Americans who give something of themselves not for personal gain, but for the enduring benefit of another. The courage of a single mom who's working 2 jobs to make sure her kid can go to college. The courage of a small business owner who's keeping folks on the payroll because he knows the family relies on it, even if it's not always the right thing to do for his bottom line. The courage of somebody who volunteers to help some kids who need help. When we recognize these acts of courage, we then necessarily recognize our own responsibility as citizens and as part of the human family to get involved and to get engaged and to take a stand, to vote, to pay attention. I'm reminded of a story that Teddy once told me about his experiences many years ago when Teddy Jr., now State Senator Ted Kennedy Jr., was sleeping after one of his cancer treatments. And Ted would wander the halls of the hospital and talk with other parents, keeping vigil over their own children. These parents lived in constant fear of what might happen if they couldn't afford the next treatment. Some calculating in their own minds what they might have to sell or borrow just to make it for a few more months. Some bargaining with God for whatever they could get. And right there in the quiet of night, working people of modest means and one of the most powerful men in America shared the same intimate and immediate sense of helplessness. And Ted could have, of course, afford his son's treatment, but it was that quiet, dignified courage of others to endure the most frightening thing imaginable and to do what it takes on behalf of their loved ones that compelled Teddy to make those parents his cause. Not out of self-interest, but out of a selfless concern for those who suffer. That's what the ordinary courage of everyday people can inspire when you're paying attention. The quiet, sturdy courage of ordinary people doing the right thing day in and day out. They don't get attention for it, they don't seek it, they don't get awards for it, but that's what's defined America. I think of women like my grandmother, and so many like her, who worked their way up from a secretarial pool to management, and in the process pushed the glass ceiling just a little bit higher. I think about people like Michelle's dad, who despite MS, got up every single morning, had to wake up an hour early to button his shirt up and put on his clothes and take those 2 canes he used and go to work every single day to make sure that he was supporting his family, not missing a dance recital or a basketball game. I think of the troops and the cops and the first responders that I've met who've put themselves at risk for strangers they will never know. And business owners who make every kind of sacrifice they can to make sure that their workers have a shot, and workers who take the risk of starting a new career, retraining at my age. Kids in the Peace Corps working to build bridges of understanding in other nations and to spread the same values that helped bring down an Iron Curtain, banish the scourge of apartheid, expand the boundaries of human freedom. I think of dreamers who suppress their fears to keep working and striving in the only country they've ever called home. And every American who stands up for immigrants because they know that their parents or grandparents or great-grandparents were immigrants too, and they know that America is an idea that only grows stronger with each new person who adopts our common creed. I think of every young activist who answers the injustices still embedded in our criminal justice system, not with violence, not with despair, but with peaceful protest and analysis and constructive recommendations for change. I think of the powerless who crossed a bridge in Selma and discovered they had power. Those who gathered at Stonewall and discovered they had a voice. Those who marched on Washington because they believed that they, without an army, without great wealth, could somehow change the very fabric of the greatest power on earth, and kept on until they stretched the lofty ideals of our founding to encircle everyone. Every citizen inspired by that history, who dips their toes in the water of active democracy for the first time and musters up the determination to try and fail and try again and sometimes fail again and still try again, knowing their efforts aren't always rewarded right away because they believe in that upward trajectory of the American story, the story that nobody told better than John F. Kennedy. That very Kennedy-esque idea that America is not the project of any one person and that each of us can make a difference and all of us ought to try. That quiet, sturdy citizenship that I see all across the country and that I especially see in young people like Jack and Rose and Tatiana and Malia and Sasha and your kids. I don't know whether President Kennedy's aide and friend, the historian Arthur Schlesinger Jr., was right when he wrote that history unfolds in cycles. But I do know that it doesn't move in a straight line. I know that the values and the progress that we cherish are not inevitable, that they are fragile, in need of constant renewal. I've said before that I believe what Dr. King said, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But I've also said it does not bend on its own. It bends because we bend it, because we put our hand on that arc and we move it in the direction of justice and freedom and equality and kindness and generosity. It doesn't happen on its own. And so we are constantly having to make a choice because progress is fragile. And it's precisely that fragility, that impermanence, that is a precondition of the quality of character that we celebrate tonight. If the vitality of our democracy, if the gains of our long journey to freedom were assured, none of us would ever have to be courageous. None of us would ever have to risk anything to protect them. But it's in its very precariousness that courage becomes possible and absolutely necessary. John F. Kennedy knew that our best hope and our most powerful answer to our doubts and to our fears lies inside each of us, in our willingness to joyfully embrace our responsibility as citizens, to stay true to our allegiance to our highest and best ideals, to maintain our regard and concern for the poor and the aged and the marginalized, to put our personal or party interests aside when duty to our country calls, or when conscience demands. And that's the spirit that has brought America so far. And that's the spirit that will always carry us to better days. And I take this honor that you have bestowed on me here tonight as a reminder that even out of office, I must do all that I can to advance the spirit of service that John F. Kennedy represents. Thank you all very much. May God bless you. May He bless these United States of America. Thank you. Do I take it with me? We'll pack it up.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thank President Obama for those comments. I thank the Ambassador, Caroline Kennedy, for her efforts in helping us prepare and implement this great evening today. And I particularly thank Jeff Immelt and General Electric for their leadership in providing this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you please stay in the tent until the President and his motorcade, Vice President Biden, until the President and his motorcade have departed at the request of the Secret Service. Then, thank you, and a memorable evening. I thank you all on behalf of the library and the foundation, Have a good evening. But please wait until the president departs with his motorcade.